Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
In this day of stay-at-home and work from home, home has never meant more than it does today. Whether you're looking to buy, rent, or build your new home, now is the time to get going. Gittins & Gittins real estate agents are here to take you to that place of your dreams. Let us take you home. We help you find that rental to rest along the way, or journey with you to find your home destination. Investors and commercial enterprises too, call us and we'll walk the distance to place your business in just the right location. Owners, leave the headaches to us. We'll find your tenants or buyers while you stay at home. We'll even manage your property at your bidding. Anything real estate, come home to Gittins & Gittins Real Estate. Call us at 760-3280 or 747-1220 or visit us at 16 Fifth Street in Woodbrook.
WESN.
Welcome, this is Talking Point. I'm Sean Michael Small, starting off the week, and one of the big stories coming out of the weekend is the situation with the amount of prosecutors or lack thereof we have. And this is something that on one hand should not be surprising, but on another hand, the solution or lack thereof might be surprising, because the situation has basically come to a head where I guess it's safe to say, if you do not have proper foundations of things and you attempt to build upon systems that have weak foundations, it's not going to work out. So essentially, the DPP, other stakeholders, and including one person in the office, one prosecutor, is basically saying, look, there's an increase in the criminal courts, and we do not have the capacity to meet the needs of this increase. And one could argue that the staff shortages of the DPP was more or less existing beforehand, because that was the narrative of it. The DPP's office is understaffed. So now asking for a situation where you have to get more staff to meet new demands on top of the pre-existing demands, it begs the question, exactly what was the thought process here? Because it almost seems as though everything is in such a silo, whether it is a silo of ignorance. I don't know what the other silo is doing. We have a backlog of cases. We got to get more judges. Do we have prosecutors for that? I don't know. Whether it's a silo of ignorance or a lack of consideration. Maybe even intentional. I don't care if they don't have enough prosecutors. We have to do this. But one of the things coming out of a junior state counsel is basically, he said, it is not humanly possible. They are required to manage over 100 complex cases despite receiving minimal training and having little experience. It is not humanly possible. He noted that the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions was not an attractive prospect for many of the newly qualified lawyers. And I think this is one of the issues that you have with any, I'm not necessarily blaming the DPP for this, poorly managed state institution. Because one of the things that could cause a work environment to essentially be poorly managed, you could pay them a reasonable salary, and you could have the basics correct, but if they're overworked, at some point, new up-and-coming lawyers, you know, freshly called to the bar, they're going to look at that situation and say, why should I go there? Now, and I'm wondering if the benefits or the reasons that young lawyers might have wanted a job in the DPP's office, it's slowly been eroded or undermined by the reality that why you want to go in that situation where it's just going to suck. We even talk about the inherent risks of being a prosecutor in a high crime nation, right? We even necessarily had to compare, you know, public servant pay versus private sector pay. No, just the fact that you're going to be overworked, you're going to be undertrained, and you're probably going to be underappreciated is going to suck. And then if the situation is bad enough, prospective employers, because what happens is, okay, maybe you go into the DPP's office, you get experience as a prosecutor, experience as a lawyer, you learn from some of your seniors, and then maybe you switch and go into private practice elsewhere. But the thing about it is, depending on how bad the situation is, there could be a world where prospective employers also are looking at it and saying, nah, we're not gonna hire people from the DPP's office anymore because the training isn't up to scratch, because the experience isn't what it was, because the lawyers are being too rushed to try to fill the gaps and not necessarily learning how to do the job properly because they're trying to keep up with an insane schedule. So, I mean, the junior prosecutor saying prosecution is really a career, right? And he's pointed to the fact that they lost experienced prosecutors, which compounds the problem. One, that's people that should be teaching the juniors. And two, losing experienced prosecutors not only means you're losing prosecutors in terms of just the number, but you're losing experience who might have been a little bit more efficient, might have been a little bit more, you know, steady, might have been able to deal with the pressure a little bit easier, at least temporarily. So overall productivity goes down, training goes down, so long-term productivity also goes down. And it's harder now to pull yourself out of the hole because I don't think there's a prosecutor school. And even if there was, the kind of things that you're going to learn in a classroom setting and you're going to learn on the job under a senior prosecutor, for a job like that, it's two different things. And basically, we've reached a point now where the DPP is saying, look, it's not that I don't want to send prosecutors to deal with whatever case, it's that I have no more prosecutors. The thing with our criminal justice system is it's not one bottleneck. It's not forensics alone, and if we solve forensics, then all of a sudden it'll be solved. The whole system has scaling issues and is unable to meet with the demands of the situation. The junior prosecutor pointed out it's not just murder cases, so now that murder cases drop, it's not as though there should be less cases for prosecutors to see about. They have to deal with everything. And it's very easy. Look, and we tried to, the last government decriminalized marijuana, so in theory, there's a lot of minor marijuana offenses that are no longer necessarily having to be dealt with. But as much as serious crime is down, we don't necessarily feel as though crime is really down and that people are avoiding criminal activity. Because the whole point is, when crime is really down, it's because people are not making the choice to commit crime because they're saying the consequences are there's too much risk that I'm going to face some serious consequences. So, over the past 3 years, 3 deputy DPPs, 2 assistant DPPs have been given judicial appointments. So it's very funny if that's the case. The judiciary give any sort of consideration, well, we're going to take people out of the DPP's office. How easily are they replaceable? Because we want to increase the number of criminal courts. So now I guess the question is, where do we go from here? And this is not necessarily only situation. And it'll be very interesting because everything, you don't necessarily get a coherent strategy from politicians, right? I don't know what it is, but I find it very laughable that politicians on the whole, from whichever party, don't really have a coherent strategy. They have, at best, and not always, a philosophy. And even then, to say they have a philosophy is probably overstating it. They have more like a feeling, a general direction that they want to try to maybe go. They don't even know if they can get there. That's everybody. I have yet to hear any politician to speak with, they don't even try to bluff, by the way. They don't even try to bluff. They don't even try to fake it, and it's because they're just bad that they can't convince me. No, they outright essentially avoid any kind of question that basically asks them about a plan, about a vision. Now, what you could take from this government, right? And I said all that to make the point. It is not unique to the UNC, this phenomenon I have observed. It is not unique to a UNC government. It is not, you see, the UNC government, you can criticize the UNC government. This is not a criticism on the UNC government. This is a criticism on our politicians on a whole. But of course, being the government, you can observe it on a certain level from their policy decisions. And from the government's policy decisions, you have to read a little bit in the tea leaves, just like you did with the past administration under the PNM. What is their philosophy? And the philosophy is actually, at its core, might not be that dissimilar. A lot of the big ticket moves are not that dissimilar. But of course, they're moving the money around in different ways. Cost cutting seems to be one of the big things for this government. Of course, increasing taxes and fees and fines seems to be one of the big things for this government, right? But with regards to that, if you are going to have to, it's a bad sign at times if a government has to dip more into the well of extracting money from the general public in order to try to make up revenue shortfalls. Usually, that shouldn't be very popular, right? And you normally don't get away with it unless you're a complete dictatorship, where you know that the people cannot resist. That's not the case here, at least I hope not. So then, there has to be a certain amount of maybe desperation behind doing things that will eventually, if they don't already look unpopular, they will be viewed as unpopular, especially if it's sustained. So, you're trying to get more money to pay bills. You're trying to cut costs. You inherited a situation with the TPP where the office was under-resourced, whether in terms of financial resources or personnel resources. How easy is it in order to rectify this problem? Do we have the financial resources in order to ensure it can be rectified quickly? Because on some level, it's going to cost if you want it done quickly. How far are we willing to go? Are we going to try to do business as usual? Just, put out an ad. I'm being sarcastic here. But just do the usual things to try to get staff. When an anonymous prosecutor is basically saying, them things ain't gonna work no more. No one wants to do this job. This job is not viewed as a great job. At a time where jobs are hard to come by, I don't know if maybe part of it is the amount of people going to law school might have been reduced. on some level, we should be oversaturated with lawyers in the private sector. I don't necessarily know because, you know, with our local tertiary system, some degrees might be viewed in some jurisdictions as valid and in other jurisdictions not. So I don't know to what extent people could be educated as a lawyer here and leave. We know our nurses, maybe not so much doctors, but definitely our nurses, they get headhunted and recruited. And the thing is, if we don't solve this problem, the judiciary comes out and says, we're going to try to solve the backlog of cases. And their solution, literally, is a non-starter. It failed as soon as it began. Because some people, if it was defense lawyers, some people might say, well, we don't care if the defense has proper lawyers, which would be bad enough to undermine the judicial process, the criminal justice system. But these are prosecutors now. And I feel as though we probably could have one hell of a bacchanal just delving into what the hell has been going on with the criminal justice system, because it feels as though there's nobody at the helm trying to oversee the situation on a macro level to prevent these sorts of very, very simple unforced errors. Because on some level, isn't it kind of ludicrous that the judiciary is going to try to expand and the DPP's office, who was under-resourced before this, so it's not as though this is coming from left field. It's not as though someone is going to say, good, since when did the DPP office lacking prosecutors, boy? Since when they didn't have enough staff in the DPP's office? I never heard about this. I never heard about this. If you are in the judiciary and you never heard about that, something is definitely wrong. And maybe whoever that is that might want to imply, because they aren't going to outright make that claim, that wants to try to maybe imply something to that effect, maybe those are not the type of people that should be in the judiciary. Just say, if you're going to make such a basic error of judgment. And this is why I have said in the past, look, on some level, if we want something in terms of the budget, we have to be willing to give up something. And every year, and now it's not just a PNM budget, it's a UNC budget. Every year, the Minister of Finance, whoever it may be, goes in front of Parliament and in front of the country and sells us a bridge, sells us a get-rich-quick scheme, sells us a beautiful story about how great the budget is, and how great the economy is, and how fine everything is going to be, and we don't have to worry, and everything's going to be all right, and don't worry, the Prime Minister said we'll find the money, and don't worry, the PNM is going to find a way, and don't worry, y'all don't have to go under any extra suffering. Now, to some extent, the PNM was really trying hard, to the point where you could argue it was still mismanagement. It was not necessarily responsible, it was still irresponsible decision making, but they were really indexing on trying to minimize what the public had to endure. I guess because they saw what happened to the NAR and they didn't want to do that. How funny that it didn't matter. You could try not to be the NAR, but at the end of the day, that don't mean the people will vote for you. You could try not to put the country under austerity measures. That don't mean that the people are going to appreciate the opportunity costs. Because in order to get something, you have to give up something. And people, whether rightfully or wrongfully, perceive the cost of the PNM's philosophies of the past administration and said, nah, we don't want that. Or maybe it was just the controversies like the Auditor General stuff and the merit list stuff and so on and so on. Maybe it was that. Maybe it was the succession controversy with Dr. Rowley to Stuart Young. Maybe it was that. But the current Minister of Finance basically did the same thing. Some of the details were different, yes, but for the most part, the type of budget, the level of explanation, the level of accountability, the level of transparency, and more importantly, the decisions didn't necessarily give one a lot of confidence that this is going to get us out of the problem. It appeared as more of the same, if not maybe in some cases, some things sounded great and some things were worse. Because there's always a game being played with regards to the national budget and the Minister of Finance's presentation. And that game is, how could we doctor the deficit to not look as bad? And this budget might have been the most blatant attempt to do that. The previous administration, they didn't necessarily have back pay that they just decided not to put on the budget. The deficits are around the same. The deficit this year from the mid-year budget review, if they're truthful with us, might be worse. The PNM, they just left certain things off the books because they never allocated resources for certain things, and that's why you had the Ministry of Education not having enough money to do all of its projects and so on and so on. The police service having to make stupid choices that they never should have had to make in the first place. And maybe the whole body camera versus body armor debate on some level. The minister is part of cabinet, so he's part of that problem. But maybe that's more of a cabinet issue. And less so the commissioner of police. What is he going to do? He doesn't control how much money is sent his way. So there have been many problems the current government inherited from the previous government. Because everyone was trying to play defense, and now on some level it seems as though in certain things the current government is also trying to play defense as well. Are they going to fix the DPP's office? And part of the problem is it's potentially going to take a long time. The situation in Washington, D.C. was that they stopped hiring new police officers and they allowed the police force to shrink. Then they had an underreporting of crime situation where they did things like take shootings and report it as simple assaults. And that caused a whole other set of controversy where even Joe Scarborough and MSNBC admitted, I don't feel safe leaving my house in Washington, D.C. My friends in Washington, D.C. don't feel safe. These aren't Republican people. These are Democrats. These are liberals. The vast majority of civilians living in Washington, D.C. is going to be Democrat. Maybe not vast, but it's significant. Now, you don't count the politicians, right? You don't count the politicians, and for the most part, there are about as many Democrat politicians as Republican politicians, on average. One of the things, though, that came out from that story was, I believe it was the chief of police for Washington, D.C., basically said it's going to take 10 years to get the staffing levels back. Because new recruitment, an allotment of new recruits are going to be necessary just to maintain what they have. So when they get a new class of recruits, it's not just going to increase the numbers completely additively, because there's going to be some subtractions because of retirement and any host of any other reasons. Not everybody in the police service is going to necessarily stick it out for a lifelong career, at least in America, right? And then, of course, similar to our DPP's office, when the situation is just bad, when you're underappreciated and you have staff shortages, so you're overworked, not everybody's going to want to stick that out. And in America, it's not like here where there's one police force, you know? I mean, yes, there's municipal police and so on and so on. But for the most part, you're not necessarily going to jump that ship maybe until you get a lot later on in your career. But in America, they have police forces in every city and in multiple different townships and counties, have sheriff's office and so on and so on. There are many job opportunities in America. So he warned it will take 10 years because you have to be able to sustain attrition, and then whatever surplus you have could be added to rebuild. And dare I ask, if we have a situation where not a lot of lawyers, if any at all, so it might be near zero, if not zero, want to be prosecutors, how are we going to, unless we spend something somehow I'm not necessarily saying what. It might have to be increased salaries or some kind of sign-in bonus. I don't know. But how are we going to entice enough young lawyers? First, we have to ensure that attrition could be sustained. However many lawyers leave have to be replaced just to keep staffing levels where they are. Then you need to, of course, go above that in order to start building back up the DPP's office. And how long is that process going to take? Because, again, Chief of Washington, D.C., basically he was concerned that it would take 10 years. 10 years to rectify a problem of staffing in order to get them back where they need to be to get back local control over the crime situation. Now we have a crime situation here. It's not necessarily police we're talking about, but we're talking about prosecutors. If the situation continues as is, theoretically we might lose more prosecutors than we gain. And the backlog will either be just as bad or worse, depending on how many we lose, if we lose at all. And at that point in time, it doesn't matter what new initiatives you have with the police service, because we've already reached the point where, with a low detection rate, I think the murder detection rate is less than 10% right now for the year. Less than 10%. With a low detection rate like that, the criminal justice system is swamped. Could you imagine if 11 out of 135 murders have been prosecuted? What if it was 60? Not even half. Well, we have the capacity. So now, when your foundation is weak, you can't try to build on top of it, at least not without a plan. Why does it feel as though the criminal justice system is in silos when nobody knows what anybody else is doing? So we've reached the point now where there's a definite bottleneck in the number of prosecutors, which was known. No one necessarily, did anyone put thought into what does it mean with regards to the system on a whole? Because now they're saying, look, the police service is going to move from 7,884 to 10,200 officers in an effort to place more boots on the ground. Because that seems to be what's working. There's a report in today's papers about police presence and increased police presence around Lady Chancellor Hill, which has put a stop to a string of robberies and break-ins, I believe, into parked cars and so forth, right? So it's nice that you have more boots on the ground, but at some point the criminals are going to be able to work around the increased police presence, because so what if there's more cops? If you can't arrest, they'll figure that out, and then they'll exploit that. And if you do arrest them and not charge them, they'll figure that out and exploit that. And if you do arrest them, charge them, and successfully start criminal proceedings to take them to court to prosecute them, well then, ironically, all we're doing is just making the backlog worse. And it's going to be ridiculous. Some of these minor matters, I don't know how much more extended the time is going to be. So we're going to spend money, right? A 5-year recruitment program, 600 officers recruited in year 1, another 6 in year 2, 372 officers annually in year 3, 4, and 5. Is it looking at attrition rates? I don't know, maybe. Of course, in this country, one of the phenomenons is our government work. Who will leave our government work, right? Why they say that? Job security. Once you have a permanent position, they can't fire you. Blah, 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 right? And we know certain leadership positions are loath to fire their employees. We can't do that. No, the popularity contest matters more than actual job performance. So, They're going to expand the academy infrastructure, training capacity, right? Obviously, the wage bill is going to go up. So they want to sustain a presence of 1,700 officers nationwide, right? And it might be necessary. The problem is, in all honesty, because the DPP's problem is probably also not going to be solved overnight. They're saying it's going to take 5 years to get their staffing to what they want it to be. And I do wonder if it is potentially, I guess the recruitment drive will be on top of pre-existing recruitment, I hope. I hope that's what they mean. Because if that's the case, pre-existing recruitment, if somehow they could do this in addition to pre-existing recruitment, 600 officers on top of whatever they normally would take in, whatever the schedule is for that. 600 officers year one, another 600 in year two, and so on and so on. So if it's on top of their normal recruitment rates, then all right, fine. If not, I'm wondering if they really understand the analysis and the HR issue. But this will only go so far with our crime problem. Unless all we want is to put band-aids on situations, this is only going to go so far because the bottleneck of the DPP's office is not going to go away. And I'm wondering, do we need all of these extra officers, or are we basically just acknowledging the fact, or implying, or conceding, maybe conceding is the best word, that, you know what, we need jobs, so let's get more jobs out there. It can't be CPEP jobs, that's a PNM thing. We can't be seen doing a PNM thing anymore. Though many partnership did all of that too, but we can't be seen doing a PNM thing anymore because we made way too much we made it way too much of a political issue, and we can't turn that back now. We can't unring that bell. But we need jobs. Police jobs. People love police jobs. Public loves police jobs. How deep into the well are we going to be to recruiting these police officers to get what I hope it's extra officers, but again, extra officers, it might not be that easy. Not everybody wants to be a police officer. How do you encourage people? Well, you might have to take candidates that they might not be joining the police service because there's a calling to be a police officer to serve and protect the public. You might be taking on officers who there's a calling to get a government job that's seen as stable, and it comes with the perks of wearing the badge and having a certain amount of power and authority over their fellow citizens, aka the bad apples. If your goal is to push recruitment numbers and you go too far to achieve that goal at the expense of the quality of candidates, you might end up accepting too many bad apples, which would be hilarious if that happens. I'm not saying it's guaranteed to happen. If that happens, and then on top of that, this DPP bottleneck basically means they're not really doing anything to solve crime, but we have far more complaints about bad police officers on the scene, because not only could they be potentially bad apples, but they'll also be rookie bad apples. There'll be rookie bad apples that the system now is going to have to try to absorb, because similar to the prosecutors, you could try to teach them everything possible in a classroom setting. But on some level, when you're a rookie, you still don't know anything unless you have prior life experience that is applicable, which in many cases is not going to matter. And in the few cases that does, that'll be an interesting situation. I won't say anything more about that. But you're not going to have the experience to know what to do. There's no way to train you to the level where you're going to act like an experienced police officer, period. End of story. That's not how human development works. Not for a job like this, which is very subjective. Police officers have discretionary powers. Part of it is written into the regulations. Part of it is the nature of the law. Obviously, yes, if someone is shooting a gun in public, you would hope that certain responses are automatic. But police officers don't just treat with violent criminals that are obvious or making things obvious, making things easy. There's a lot of judgment calls when being a police officer. even when you're confronting a violent criminal, when to shoot, when not to shoot. There are circumstances where somebody could be blasting full automatic fire in public, and depending on various factors, you can't shoot. There might be a set of civilians behind him. If you miss, you're going to hit a civilian. You can't shoot. You have to at least relocate first before you shoot. He might have a hostage. He might have a human shield. There might be too much obstacles in the way. People could be between you and the shooter. And then, of course, again, that's a situation where there might be an obvious reprieve, or an obvious, well, this is a threat, I have to deal with it. That takes experience. It takes experience to deal with domestic situations. It takes experience when someone calls you because there's somebody with a mental handicap and he's being aggressive in public. It takes experience to know how to treat with people when their homes just got robbed, or they might have been the victim of a home invasion and they suffered violence. And it's not just about asking for the cold hard facts, but how to communicate with victims, in part because you want to make them comfortable so that they're not stressed out and they could do their best to, remember what happened and then state it, because it's stressful to have to relive whatever it is you go through. It takes experience to know who's mama guying you and who's not mama guying you. It takes experience to know when it's appropriate to treat with, to how to treat with, or what is appropriate to treat with. You might have known this guy back in the day, giving you a sob story, he asking you for a chance. Come now, we know each other, we pitch marbles since we was boys. And some people who don't have experience and who might not really think it through might say, yeah, you're right, you know what, I'll give you a bye. And that might not necessarily be the right decision. And where do they get the experience? Doing the job. And if they don't have seniors to do the job with, that is going to be hard-won experiences, because they're going to have to make all the mistakes that their predecessors made instead of learning from the mistakes. They will have to make all of the mistakes, possibly repeatedly. In this country, you think the public is going to want to have to go through that process, that growing pain, those teething pains of watching junior police officers stumble their way through their first 2, 3, 4 years? And then when they get into a gunfight, and which one shoots one of their partners in the back of the head because they don't know what they're doing? It's happened before, right? It could happen again. And then you get the bad apples, right? So covering things up, exploiting the public, being corrupt, more susceptible to that, depending also if the training just ain't there. Now, at times, a blank slate can be good to deal with certain issues, but this doesn't sound like they're doing that with that purpose. So, this whole situation, I don't understand. I don't understand. You're the government, right? You spent all this time talking about how bad the PNM is. Vote for me instead, I'll solve the problem. All of that's fine. But why does it feel as though national security decisions are being made where the left hand doesn't even care what the right hand can do? Not just what the right hand is doing. There's no consideration to what the right hand can do. But the system does not allow the various elements, does not allow both hands to try to clap on their own. You need two hands to clap. The system needs all of its parts in order to work. Look, that whole situation with the Ukrainian plane. It's a Ukrainian crew. I saw one report call it a jet. It's not a jet. You could see the props. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. 4-engine turboprop. Turboprop means it's a propeller plane. It's not a jet, just by the way. It's a Ukrainian crew with an Eastern European-made, Russian-made Antonov cargo aircraft carrying explosives. I don't know, something tells me the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing in this case. And it became a big stink, and then somebody did an oopsie, put egg on their face because it became a public incident when it should have never been made a public incident. Because what happened? Well, they let the plane go, right? It's a Ukrainian crew on a transport plane with explosives. There's a lot of questions there that now the public might have, because I believe the left hand didn't know what the right hand is doing. So a plane that should have just come in and come out because it had nothing to do with us, now publicly, is a major story in our papers for reasons. I mean, it could be that the Ukrainians just decided to do it on their own. We're going to come in, we're going to land here, we're going to get fuel here, because here's a good spot to get fuel, right? Piaco, Trinidad and Tobago, good spot to get fuel. But now we're going to tell them what our cargo is. They don't need to know. Might not have been the best decision-making tree, you know, for the Ukrainians, but something tells me that I don't know if they made that decision solely on their own. It takes two hands to clap. You ain't realize we ain't really hearing much applause from the government. We hearing applause from the politicians when they want to have a look at me, look at the great things we did, which is so funny because the legit things that they did, the legislation that they either passed or looking to pass, like the parole legislation, maybe I'm missing it, but where is that in the news? I did a Google search trying to just see what was written about it. Nothing. Because there's too much bacchanal and bubble going on. And we've now reached the point, this is year 2. This is the beginning of year 2. I don't know if you've noticed, but we've had controversy on top of controversy to the point where, similar to the last guy, before we could even process what nonsense is going on, there's new nonsense. Some of it is inherited, but at the end of the day, you are hired to sort out the mess, not to continue it or to add to it. So the problem with the country and the direction it's headed is not necessarily just the government and whatever it is they're doing wrong or what have you. The problem is there's no solution. No one is giving us or presenting themselves as a proper solution. No one is doing it. No one. I know that there's going to be a subset of the population for each politician and political party that's going to say, my guy or my girl is the solution. And I'm here to tell you, if I do nothing else on television for the rest of my life, none of them, not one of them has a proper plan or has put proper thought into the actual issues. All they do is think about how to win the next election or undermine the current government to call for a snap election. That's it. That's the beginning and the end. There are no ideas. There's no grand strategy. There is no unifying philosophy. There is no true leadership. There is no example of how to do things better. Zero, zilch, nada, none. That's why the government, for those who are not wearing rose-colored glasses and have the blinders on and can only see when UNC wins, everybody. For the people who are not stuck in that mode, it's not just because there are issues with the current crop of politicians making up the government. These are, one, the expectations we have for them because we don't demand anything more from them. And two, they're operating within what is deemed to be acceptable behavior in general. They're following the examples of their predecessors, whether it is the past P&M administration or the partnership administration before that, or the Manning administration before that, or the Pandey administration before that. They're in line with their predecessors. They don't know any better in some cases, in some situations, in some circumstances. Because the last thing I expected is basically to see the national security apparatus being managed by a bunch of amateurs that are trying to do their level best to prove that the previous administration were not the only ones that didn't have a clue. We also don't have a clue. That's like having a soft drink factory and you're going to say, we're going to increase the output of our soft drink production, but we're not going to increase the output of our bottling. So we'll make more soft drink, but we won't have bottles to put them in. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? Because in politics, it doesn't matter if you actually accomplish anything. It only matters how it looks. It only matters if your slogans go viral. It only matters if you win the popularity contest. Because our population seemingly does not care about proper governance. Proper governance is not always going to look fun. Proper governance is not always going to give us everything that we want and tell us everything that we want to hear. Proper governance is going to do things that are responsible, not flashy. Do things that are sustainable, not sensational. Do things that will solve problems, not leave problems to cause us to be dependent upon in perpetuity. The nursing situation. This is the report. The board of the NCRHA says it has implemented several cost-cutting measures over 9 months, cost-cutting, to address major financial and operational deficiencies inherited from the previous administration. Now, if you have deficiencies, how is cost-cutting helping deficiencies? Financial and operational deficiencies. I mean, not that it can't, but exactly how? Inherited from the previous administration with severely compromised healthcare delivery. Financial constraints. All right, cost cutting can help that. Widespread operational inefficiencies. Maybe. Non-existent maintenance programs and broken down medical equipment. Well, if you are redirecting funds, all right. While hundreds of millions of dollars were owed to suppliers for maintenance, medical equipment, and essential services. In several instances, suppliers ceased providing goods and services to the NCRHA due to outstanding payments owed to them, resulting in shortages of critical supplies, including unavailable laboratory reagents and delays in equipment repairs. All right. In a response, the TNT National Nursing Association, E.D. Stewart, the president, said, "The old adage that a fisherman never says his fish is rotten is a true description of the NCRHA's press release." One thing is true, after the last 9 months following the new NCRHA Board of Directors taking office in August 2025, there has been no shortage of upheaval and chaos in the NCRHA. Because one of the issues is when you make big changes quickly, stability is not generally something that you could sustain while doing that. One of the reasons the association has been calling for an independent body, this is one of the reasons the association has been calling for an independent body to evaluate public and private healthcare institutions in TNT. Stewart claims the information in the NCRHA's releases is sometimes contradictory, as the number of nurses the board says it hired changes every press release. He questioned how many nurses the board has actually hired during the past few months. So it really comes down to the shortage of nursing personnel within the NCRHA. Was some of that the cost-cutting measures? It demonstrates the hypocrisy of the NCRHA and its press releases. The only reason why you need to pay nurses, incentivize and encourage them to come out for extra duty is that it confirms you don't have enough nursing personnel, and it is negatively affecting the patient moving through the system from A&E to the wards because there are not enough nurses in both these areas. Another shortage problem. Another cost-cutting area. And that's not the only issue with the public health system, to be honest. And then there's questions about the education system. Still have questions about the fire service. You know, and of course now there are lesser things in various ministries that we don't hear about as much because it's not as flashy and it's not as centralized, it's not as obvious, and they don't have people like Mr. Stewart of the Nursing Association to be a highlight on these things. So how many other things are going wrong? Don't have a DPP to highlight these things. How many of these things are going wrong? I don't know. Part of it is what was inherited, I get that. But part of it is when we don't actually hear any sort of detailed explanation as to what's going on, that's usually a sign of believe in me. Don't look too closely at the man behind the curtain. Don't look too closely at the details. The behind the scenes stuff. Don't ask too many questions about the reality of the situation. Just trust what I tell you. Everything's going to work out fine. No family member has never mama guide their older relative into signing away their wealth and defrauding them of all of their personal assets and leaving them penniless. No family member ever did that. Let's take a break. When we come back, hopefully we'll be joined by our media master via Zoom. This is talking about the WSN, the Content Capital. We'll be right back after this.
If these walls could talk, they'd cry uncle. They didn't plan to become offices or yoga studios. But they've stood by us, even when we got a little stir-crazy. For that, they deserve some thanks. They deserve Benjamin Moore.
Stroke is a leading cause of death and disability worldwide. Globally, 1 in 4 adults over the age of 25 will have a stroke in their lifetime.
Usually you would then have a conversation with the relatives, let them know exactly what's the status, what you were thinking.
We are not really ignoring them. We are acting on the patient at hand, after which we tend to communicate to them.
Yeah.
Are you driven, ambitious, and ready to earn? WESN, the content capital, is expanding, and we're looking for dynamic media sales executives to join our team. Sell powerful advertising solutions across television, digital, and social media platforms, and help brands tell their story. If you have strong communication skills, a passion for sales, and the drive to succeed, join WESN today. Send your CV to marketing@wsncc.com or WhatsApp 68-61662 and start building your future.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide: Center City Mall, Chaguanas, and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
Hi, I am Emiliana Beechan, and I am a mental health and conflict resolution consultant. Welcome to Mind Matters, the show where we explore the intricate world of mental health and the art of conflict resolution. Join us as we hear from mental health professionals, conflict resolution experts, and everyday people who have transformed their lives through understanding and communication. Mind Matters, WESN Content Capital.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward and our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for. It's called loss and damage, and we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
In this day of stay at home and work from home, home has never meant more than it does today. Whether you're looking to buy, rent, or build your new home, now is the time to get going. Gittins & Gittins real estate agents are here to take you to that place of your dreams. Let us take you home. We help you find that rental to rest along the way, or journey with you to find your home destination. Investors and commercial enterprises too, call us and we'll walk the distance to place your business in just the right location. Owners, leave the headaches to us. We'll find your tenants or buyers while you stay at home. We'll even manage your property at your bidding. Anything real estate, come home to Gittins & Gittins Real Estate. Call us at 760-3280 or 747-1220 or visit us at 16 Fifth Street in Woodbrook.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm nothing to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
let's go to the last part.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
Now you don't need to register nothing. You don't need. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
We believe we defend criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploited the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
I'm back here talking about the WSND Content Capital Show. Michael Small, weak apologies with regards to media ambassador. As you know, he is someone who suffers from health issues, someone who continues to work long hours for the police service while having situations that does require certain amounts of treatments and so forth. And hopefully he's feeling okay. He did contact me. He was attempting to come on this morning via Zoom, but seems as though he's not able to come on. So we're gonna have to go on without him. Maybe we might be able to get him throughout the at another point in time later on in the week, but usually his schedule does not easily allow for that, but we'll see. In the meantime, I'll continue where I left off, to be honest, because it's one of those things where I probably forgot in the moment just how many things you could potentially link to what I was saying before. I just needed to put a pause and hopefully welcome the media ambassador, but we could continue. One of the things is, of course, it was a big story. This story probably was a little overblown, but it made international headlines with regards to the mass grave, which usually implies a certain behavior to cause the mass grave that in this case I don't believe anybody thought occurred, but still, again, it made international press. Now I believe it is, the funeral home is basically saying cutbacks within state agencies and poor oversight of funeral disposal contracts created the conditions that led to the scheduled mass burial of 56 bodies at the Kamutu Cemetery last month. Cutbacks. Hospitals have been selecting the lowest tenders, and as such, the fees may not be allowing the provider to provide a sense of dignity. If you're basically, on some level, you can't expect the funeral homes to foot the bill with regards to funeral costs. So then how much is the tender offer? Because it's a tender offer, so this, one would imagine it's the funeral homes putting these offers forward. But then now, what are they promising to do for what might be too little money? Because in that respect, it might still be the funeral home's fault, But then this is one of the things that we need to understand. When you are selecting a contractor and they give you a very low price, say you're doing work on your house, are you going to just say, look at that, he's doing the work for less than he costs the materials? Obviously, the steal of a deal is too good to not take, as opposed to too good to be true. So one, how low is the tender that it is financially unsustainable, infeasible, unrealistic? And two, to what extent now are the authorities basically kind of turning a blind eye to certain things? If you don't tell me you're doing it, I don't need to know, then I can't be blamed. Like, what's going on, right? Cost-cutting measures within hospitals and other state institutions, such as the Forensic Science Center, have reduced the handling of deceased persons to the smallest part of the budget. So, you're selecting the cheapest tender. Do you even check to see if the tender makes it financially viable for the work that's expected to be done? Because on some level, you can anticipate a contract or a tender being unrealistic. That's why you don't always just go for the lowest tender. The lowest tender possible is not always the most responsible. But, again, it comes back to the whole cost-cutting thing. The current government, I will actually, in a way, give them this credit. They are aggressively pursuing certain strategies to try to see to the needs of the budget. So there is, on some level, you could interpret a sense of urgency. You're not necessarily going to see it, but you can interpret a sense of agency with regards to how far they're going with certain measures. And on some level, I actually can understand that, can appreciate that. The problem is the actual measures being utilized, or well, we'll just cut funding to certain things like burial of unclaimed bodies. It literally became, first of all, did no one anticipate the potential outcome, the potential consequences of such a decision? And second of all, ironically, this is a time when it's good. The left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing, so it became a whole incident. Now again, how many areas do we have situations like this where it's not just people are being fast and loose with regulations, but the financial pressures are to some extent forcing people to take irresponsible shortcuts so that the Minister of Finance could say in budget presentation, oh, the deficit is only 3-point-something billion. I mean, there's a part of me that kind of knew it was too good to be true, but I wasn't willing to say it in the moment. I wasn't sure, I wasn't confident. I kind of wanted it to be true, at least to some extent, even though I should have, in hindsight, and hindsight is always 20/20, I should have known better. But I didn't. I allowed myself to hope that this can be a thing, even when I should have known better. I did not really exercise my best judgment. And you know what? If I did, people probably would have said, why are you being so pessimistic, similar to when I had issues with a former commissioner of police. But look, before the election, let me make sure I am not mixing up my politicians now. Vasan Barath, right? He was all with rejoining the UNC, and granted, I didn't even know what the purpose of him doing that was, to be honest. And while he is a well-spoken and probably a brilliant guy, I don't know to what extent he actually knows what he's doing politically when it comes to those kinds of things. But he has decided now to make a very direct and somewhat absolute statement with regards to the current government, which is technically of his party, right? At least at one point or another. The UNC government has been weak on economic performance and the provision of safety. The clear verdict now, even amongst loyal UNC supporters, it's interesting that he said that. I don't know what he has to back that up, but he's made the claim publicly. Isn't simply that government has underperformed. There's recognition that the administration is overwhelmed and ill-equipped to handle the job and provide solutions they campaigned on. Now, on some level, that is true. I don't know if it's fully true, but on some level, that seems to be true. Because what they campaigned on and what we're getting is not necessarily the same thing. It might be similar. We have a money line. Caller, good morning. You're on the air. Caller?
Morning, Sean.
Morning, morning.
Boy, I was trying to help make sense of the situation. Right? The government as it stands today cannot pay up-to-date salaries to the public service. So teachers up to 2023, the police up to 2019, the nurses on 2013 salaries, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Hello?
Yes, yes, yes.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
No, I see the muted sign come on. What I'm saying, the government of the day cannot pay or honor the negotiations that have been signed, right? But we have the minister coming on television and telling us that the police service is going to increase their intake.
Mm-hmm.
Because by 2,000, however the numbers is, because from 6,900 or 7,900 to 10,200. So anyway, take it, we're going up by 2,000, 2,000 to 3,000 more salaries to pay. So if you can't pay who you have working now, how you intend to pay an increased workforce? I would like some clarification on that, because the Matson, yeah, the Matson,
yeah, and
well, they directly offer some people 4% because MTS gets 000 for 2013 to 2016, right? So in some instances it's less than 4, in some instances it's more than 4. But I want to know where this money coming from and how we plan to do that. Have a good day. I'll listen off here.
Thank you, caller. I mean, so there's two directions to the answer, right? Or there's two things you need to look at. The first thing is what you said. You point to a very practical, the real practical question behind it is, well, you're keeping salaries at a certain rate. That implies you don't have the money. But you want to increase hiring. Where are you getting the money for that all of a sudden? Now, you might give them the benefit of the doubt and say there was long-term planning to consider this issue, so they held back some money to hire more people. The problem with that is there is nothing to suggest that politicians do long-term planning. And the situations with salaries, they started whatever philosophy they're working under, whatever strategy they're working under, or lack thereof, from since last year, right? So to say that they were, I think the main thing was they were holding money back. They didn't necessarily know for what, right? And it is one of those weird things where when it looks as though it's not on the same level, but it is slightly similar to the wage increases. You're going to increase hiring means you're going to increase the wage bill. So it's going to look bad when you're saying, but we can't give you all wage increases. If you use the money for something else, it won't look quite as bad. And that's the practical aspect I believe that just make it to. There's another part of it. I don't know if it's a new caller or calling back from Arima. Caller, you on the air? Caller?
Hi, good morning. Good morning,
Morning,
Sean.
morning.
Yes, calling from Harima. Now, I want to make a clarion call to the government and the minister in the Ministry of Social Welfare. Now, I went out Friday and I met 4 senior citizens, right, who work very hard in this country. They contributed in this country to make Trinidad and Tobago what it is today. They worked very hard. I think one was about 79, one was about 81, and up to now, right? They pension. People not getting their pension. Then senior citizen old people. It have some people again, all 3 and 4 years. They apply up to now, they can't get the pension, but you're always hearing the minister coming out and say it's a backlog and they're trying to deal with that. Now, come on. It have people, them senior citizens, they have their rent to pay. It has some people have 2,800 rent every month, right? It have the government ministers and them. They're sitting down when the Sunday come. They're eating, they're having a nice lunch, and senior citizens of this country have to suffer. They ain't getting their money, no pension. Or you come on with it. People suffering here for pension, right? And it's not right because they lift up Trinidad and Tobago. They make contribution and have Trinidad and Tobago what it is today, right? All you don't suffer the senior citizens. Don't suffer them. It have people now reach all 65 and over, and up to now they can't get their pension. Why are you doing this? I mean, we can't talk about the former government. They're gone. All you inside now. So all you have to forget about them and all you have to do what all you have to do. So I'm calling on my honorable Prime Minister, right? Check it out and see what's going on. It have people suffering. They have to buy the medication. They have no money to buy the medication. It's not everybody getting the NIS, you know. And people welcome the little old age pension to get the little pension when the month comes to help them to buy the medication, the little tablets. It does be so sad when people talking to you and telling you those things. I always tell people, I ain't no government minister, but I just still come out and talk for them because they are senior citizens. That's why I'm making this clarion call today. And I hope the Prime Minister are listening. Come on with people pension. And when you go to the welfare, the social welfare, have a senior person in front there, right? I mean, yes, the young people and them, they have to take over. But when you go, they have somebody senior in front there. So when you're talking, they could at least understand and explain to you. Sometimes when you go there, right, like the woman was telling me, when you go there, you see all them young people, when you talk to them, so like, today is the officer, today is your officer day. When you go there now to them, here where they're telling you, although the officer there, here where they're telling you, no, we can't do nothing, the officer will call you. That's nonsense, because after you pay, you take your last $20 to pay passage to go down there. They're telling you to go back home, the officer will call you. Prime Minister, step on it and put something in place, because the old people and them, everybody was suffering out here. So this is my clarion call to the government. And I know the government trying. But oh God, the old people need their medication. Some of them well sick and they cannot function without getting the little kakada you could see. They need a little kakada too, just like everybody else. When the month come, they get in their little thing. They could sit down with their family and eat something, right? And then when you get it, it's finished in just a little rent and just to buy your medication. So that's tough for them people, so no, right? Thank you very much. It's a clarion call to the government of this country. Come on, order. Step on it. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Society, more often than not, our rules and our laws, the formal laws, they are the backstop. They are the hard line that we enforce that we should not cross. But the reality is, a lot of society is rarely predicated on social contracts that we have with each other, right? Now, for everyday citizens amongst each other, it is, I don't try to commit violence against you, you don't try to commit violence against me. That's one of the basic ones, right? You walk down the street, most people are not going to look to fight with anybody, and then say somebody kind of knocks into you. You're not looking to escalate it. Now, one of the things with a society is, for the sake of argument, we're assuming these people, they don't have any kind of criminal record. You know, they made all their contributions. They were productive members of society. They didn't really break any laws worthy of note. When you live a good life and you do all the right things and you do what's asked of you, what's expected of you by society, and you contribute to society, and you're not a burden to society, it is a shame and it is a serious issue when you don't need extraordinary rewards, but you should be rewarded with what you are essentially entitled to at the bare minimum. And it's a bad sign if things are so bad that that's interrupted or prevented or disrupted in any way. But then what makes it worse is how that is treated with, that breach in the promise. You contributed to society, you should get X. Now we can't give you X. And maybe there is a legitimate reason why. Of course, that's to be debated, right? That's to be debated. But then to add insult to injury, what is the mechanisms to treat with this issue? As she pointed out, when you're already having issues with your retirement money and you need to get medication, so to sort it out, you pay to travel. I will tell you this, there is no politician that will fundamentally understand what you said, caller, when you need to use your last bit of cash to travel to the office to try to sort out the issue, to get the money that you need to continue to live, and this is the last bit of money you have on hand, at least for a while. There is no government or member of parliament that understands that. None of them do. Because to them, they'll just say, well, why can't I just jump in a fancy car and go down the road? And of course, the amount of money they spend on gas might be the same amount of money it takes for you to travel. They won't understand that. I guarantee you they won't understand that. Because I myself was never in that position where I have to spend the last amount of my money to try to travel to sort out some bureaucratic issue in order to get something like a pension. I've never been in that position. And I'm not rich. I am far from rich. I am literally the opposite of rich. Right? So if I haven't necessarily experienced that for myself, have you seen the kind of cars that they drive? The kind of clothes that they wear? The kind of life that they lead? They definitely will not understand. We have Digger Martin waiting. Sorry for the wait, caller. Again, sorry for the wait. Good morning, you're on the air.
Morning, Mr. Small.
Morning, morning.
Mr. Digger Martin here.
Yes. It's good to hear from you, sir.
Yes, well, I'm sitting there watching you, when you have positions, do according as obsession.
Yes.
I think what I heard the minister said when the police, employing the police is concerned, is that they're going to do it incrementally over the years. From now on to the next 4 years, I think. That's what he said. So they probably won't do, a big step. They'll do when they can afford to do it. I think that's what they're trying to do. So I just called to hear your voice. I mean, I'll be hearing your voice on the TV, and still, you're looking good as ever. Keep up the good work, and, hope everything goes well with you, and take care of yourself and keep in good health. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you, caller. Caller, you will never know how much that call meant to me today. With that said, I understand that they're trying to do it incrementally, but I think the previous caller's questions about the prioritization of money is still valid. Now, granted, this is the thing, and I did say there was another part to that issue. So the caller from Digicel, you're now touching the other part of the issue where you do have to you can't manage everything on a very principled or idealistic way, right? So you have an issue with crime, you do have to try to hire more officers. Not everything should get a wage increase for every period. I think the private sector workers don't necessarily, especially with regards to COVID. But we haven't even reached negotiating for COVID, which is crazy, or the COVID periods for some of these wage negotiations. But this was a problem with regards to salaries and all of the backlog of wage negotiations that I don't think any one administration was going to be able to solve completely. You could plug away at it, and we have to continue to plug away at it so that it doesn't continue to grow. And the thing about it is, you can't necessarily put things on pause. So as you rightfully pointed out, they're trying their best, we hope. You can't put things on pause. That's not responsible in order to try to treat with this long-term problem. It doesn't necessarily look good, or at least for those that are directly involved, that are directly affected, they might not appreciate it, right? But the situation is, all right, fine, you have a need. There has to be some degree of capacity for the government to say, look, I understand that we have demands here, but we also have demands here, and now it's compromising one situation for another because what you prioritize. I think the issue is, what doesn't help is that they are not able to present a unified operational theory. This is how our view from the top, this is the main philosophy which will guide us. We want to tell you what it is so you will understand our decision-making process and then explain how that applies to everything, right? Because for me, it would be, if we're going to prioritize national security, that's fine, right? And therefore, I will then have an easier time accepting, yes, so certain wage negotiations might have to, we might not be able to give as much as you might want right now, right? This project, we might not be able to do things for these type of projects right now, right? Because the priority is getting crime under control so that the private sector will be more able to operate without this restriction that is having to safeguard themselves from robbery and armed robbery and what have you. And it will make economic activity easier and hopefully give the economy a chance to naturally recover over time. That's fine, but we're not getting that. So the thing is, to Mr. Digicsel's point, on some level, we have to read the tea leaves to deconflict the conflicts, the contradicting philosophies that we see in their decision-making process, because they will use contradicting justifications in some, not necessarily all, but in some circumstances, and it will leave the members of the public, they're interpreting things differently because the signs are going in different directions, and you're making a mess of things if you allow that to happen. We have another caller on the line. Caller, sorry for having you wait. Good morning, caller. You on there?
Hello?
Caller, good morning.
Hello?
Yes, you're on
Good
here.
morning. Yes. So, I have explained to you before
Yes.
problem with the NIS pension, right?
Mm-hmm.
The problem is some years ago, government decided to rationalize the pension. And they would look and they would make, with a consulted certain authorities, and what was recommended to them is that the NIS, old age pension, everything should be put in one. And when you come to time for LIS, who didn't meet the minimum contribution will get old age pension. Instead, we have messed it up to the extent where old age pension is more than the minimum if you pay NIS. Any question?
No, caller. I think I don't disagree with you. I think what I was speaking about was.
No, it don't matter what you speak.
Yeah.
Cause for it.
Yes.
Oh.
It brings up a good point. Thank you.
Yeah, right.
So essentially, and this is something that we always have to keep in the back of our mind, right? Because the previous caller from Shogunas, those who would probably recognize his voice if you're watching the show long enough, he's pointing the fact that the situation has been not managed well, mismanaged, and potentially undermined due to politics, political incentives. I want to do something that the population will like. It might not be the most responsible decision, right? Now, one could argue Mr. Manning was weighing different things. To what extent you agree with that thought process, because the professor has a good point. It doesn't matter if you're trying to provide a benefit if the benefit is unsustainable, right? Now the question is, where was the mistake made to lead to a potential unsustainable decision? And it seems like, in hindsight, it seems very unsustainable. And it's not something that couldn't be predicted. Here's the thing, though, because it's a catch-22, because with all that said, someone's going to say, well, right, so why expect the government to do this and that and the other with regards to this and that and the other? Here's the problem. The mistake was made by a previous administration. And until you treat with it, you have made that promise to the population. If you want to reverse the decision, that's fine. But until you formally go through the process of explaining why and blah, 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 the promise was made to the population. And the promise has to be kept. Because if the people cannot believe that the government will come through, not in terms of extraordinary circumstances, but in basic circumstances, I contribute to society, I contribute to the fund. This is what was promised to me. I live my life. I try to be a good citizen of TNT. You wanted me to make these contributions. You said at the end of it, I will get X, Y, and Z. And now the new government is apparently, maybe not directly, saying that I can't. But I live my life based on this expectation. I balance my economics based on this factor. And now you say that I can't. And then what makes it worse is, and I get it, again, it's a rock and a hard place situation, but the promise was made to the citizens. So you cannot just pull the rug out from underneath them. And then on top of that, how they are being communicated with is lackluster at best, irresponsible at worst, or not just irresponsible, negligent. Because now you've reached a segment of the population and a period in their lives where the severity of these things is magnified. It's bad enough if it was children or even young adults, right? It's bad enough when you have economic woes to that level, but then it's made bad enough by people who are reliant not just on the basic necessities for survival, food, shelter, clothing, but also life-saving pharmaceuticals, which ain't cheap. We should have the second caller from Marima on the line. Caller, welcome back.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Oh, wait, is this first Marima? Caller, go ahead, yes.
Yeah, morning, sure, morning, sure.
Morning.
I
I'm joining the debate very late this morning, so I don't want to double tap.
Okay.
But my point is that the NIB and the NIS situation have nothing to do with this present government. I'm taking that out from the equation. What has happened over the years is that previous governments, probably including the People's Partnership Government, they utilized the funds that was dormant in the NIB and NIS programs to make investments which bottomed up. And as a result of that, we are in this situation today where they are unable to finance the end result of the NIS contributions. I will listen off here. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, caller. Now, and I guess the thing is, and I understand, again, the problem comes before. So you identified one factor, the professor identified, from Chagonas identified another factor. And I'm not saying that all of it falls on the foot of this government. What I am saying is it puts the government, yes, to some extent, in a difficult position. Now, there might be practical reasons why, because if the money just doesn't exist, the money doesn't exist. On some level, and what you've seen in governments before, not just ours, I would imagine, or maybe not ours, I don't know if this situation quite like this came up before, but what you've seen in other governments is they will find money to prop up the system because the immediate needs of the people who was not expected, and this is the thing, no, it's not as though, obviously, yes, the UNC went in opposition, they would want to harp on it, right, and make things public. But it's not as though they're necessarily making all the bad things public now. Why? Because they're in government. And when you're in government and you talk about the bad things, unless you could sell it as a PNM problem only, you rather not talk about it, right? It's not going to be popular. You avoid the issue. There's a level of responsibility to either try to find a way to rectify the problem in the short term for the people who are dependent on it, that they can't course correct now. They can't go back in time now and go back to when they're 35 or even 40 or even 55 to try to change their circumstances that they're stuck in now. They are stuck in this circumstance. They potentially have no way to get themselves out of it. And the problem is not they decided to go and do something they weren't supposed to be doing. Hey, this drug thing might be cool. Let me try that. Hey, maybe I should steal money from my employer. No, the scenario presented to us from the concerned caller making a clarion call to the government was you had a group of people, they did everything that was asked of them by society. We have some responsibility to at least not leave them out in the cold, to fend for themselves. Right? This is why governance is hard. And most politicians want to make it out as though it's easy. It's easy. This is the thing. On some level, it's slightly easy if you have a true value system, if you have a true ethical value system, because you will at least be able to identify when it's too far, when you can't allow bad things to happen, right? What makes it hard, though, regardless, is when the numbers just don't support the needs. I get that. I understand that. But that's the other side of the equation. If it was an easy job, even a caveman would do it, right? And that's what a lot of politicians are basically selling the public. That's what you got sold on in this election. When they say when everybody will win, the implication is that we are going to find a way to make sure no one suffers. Don't you like that? No one suffers. But the reality is, unless you are insanely wealthy, you don't have enough resources to meet with every need, to treat with every worthy situation. It's going to be hard to make those kinds of no-win scenario decisions. And no politician in this country levels with the population about that. None. They only want to make it out to be, look how great we did, look how dumb they are. the other side, and that's the extent that we get to. We'll find the money. We'll find the money, if you really think about it in hindsight, might end up being one of the most irresponsible statements a prime minister has ever made, or at least this prime minister, right? Now, there might be more controversial and more unethical things done by other prime ministers, right? This is not the worst thing that a prime minister has done, but with regards to irresponsible, in the sense of you're being too careless to the population. You're coming in front of them, you're presenting a veneer of truth and honesty, and then you're saying, we'll find the money. The implication is, don't worry, everything will be all right. But you're not really leveling people to say, hard times might be ahead. Brace yourselves. We will not enjoy it any much more than you will, and we'll do everything that we can to make things fair. That's not what they said. So this is a catch-22 situation for me, because I'm the first one to say that we have to sacrifice and blah, blah, blah if we want to solve certain problems, if we want to get ourselves out of the situation. But the problem is there's going to be people in various circumstances, like people depending on government pension and NIS and so on and so on. They don't have a way out of the scenario. So what are we going to do? And then more important, because again, so I think it's the third caller from Marima. More important, I understand if the government has practical limitations. But in times like that, leadership will have a handle on the situation. Leadership not only will communicate the situation to the public, but will put things in place so when the poor people goes to the government offices to speak to the CSR clerks or whoever with regards to their issues, instructions from on high will trickle down to basically say, you need to treat them better. This is what we could do for them. This is what we could recommend to them. And by no matter what, do not talk to them in any sort of callous or dismissive way, please. Direct them to this hotline or direct them to this office to try to solve their problems or whatever. But you do need to have some kind of plan to present to the members of the building. You can't just have the CRs just say, well, we'll talk to them nice and tell them go away. So it's a complex scenario, but the end result is if people, this is how you get criminals. This is how you get corruption, because their children will see it. And their children's children will either see it or hear the stories. Your grandfather, your grandmother worked an honest life, had an honest job, did the hours, paid their contributions, paid their taxes, never broke a law, never had an outstanding debt, and the world swallowed them up and nobody cared. That's the scenario that the caller from Arima, the second caller from Arima, presented to me today. That the circumstances of life was allowed to just swallow them up whole. And seemingly, the society that set up those circumstances, as a society, not individual people, but as a society, did not care. Because when they needed help, nobody seemingly was willing to help them. And there are a lot of NGOs, but I would imagine all of them are being pushed to their breaking point right now. All, right? And this is an issue that the government should be treating directly. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to just find all of the money to replace all of the money. You could think strategically, think creatively, figure it out. Because when the grandchildren hear that story, life is not fair. The system hates us. Why should I do the right thing? And then it's either going to be a violent criminal or a white-collar criminal. Or a businessman conducting unethical business practices because the world owes me everything because the world gave my family nothing. That's what's going to happen. That's one of the reasons why we have a culture of lawlessness in this country, because far too many people have the experience of being mistreated by society, by the very society that's asking us to stay within the confines of the law, to stay within the confines of proper conduct. And then, look, there's an article about homophobic remarks in Parliament. Now, the issue is not, do you agree the homophobic remarks are insulting to the LGBTQ community or not? The problem is, it's a negative behavior being done in Parliament. And it's not the only negative behavior being done in Parliament. And it sends a message. It sends a message where we, the parliamentarians, in the hallowed halls of government, literally the most important public institution of the country, the most important one. Yeah, we are going to treat it like a backyard, like a schoolyard, like a fish market. We don't care. We is the ruling class. Y'all is the peasants. Live with it. And people are going to see that. People are going to see the rules for us, but not for them. And they're going to say, well, if that's the case, why should I bother? Why should I bother when my grandmother couldn't even get her NIS and die because she couldn't get her diabetes or blood pressure medication? Why should I bother when the system is seemingly doing everything it can to work against me? Because the politicians are not concerned with helping the people. The politicians are concerned with whatever pet project, like the whole landmark TT situation, or trying to cover up whatever bad news that they have. What, Moody's wants to drop our credit rating? We'll just say our strategic alignment is out of alignment with Moody's. So we'll just drop Moody's because we don't like what they have to say. Heavens forbid we actually try to, I don't know, legitimately solve problems so that we look good. There's a reason why you engage with multiple credit ratings as much as possible. Because you know what's going to happen? Due diligence, question number one. Exactly why did the NGC drop Moody's? Now, on some level, they might be publicly willing to accept the explanation, but privately, do you really think any operator in the oil and gas sector worth their salt, especially now, is going to be willing to take that excuse and not delve into it further? One of the things I think our politicians need to understand, and to some extent, the PNM might have understood this better. Might have. They very well might have. These foreign international players, they are not on as low of a level as most of our politicians. Our politicians are temporarily big fish in a small pond because they won a popularity contest. When you get these high-powered oil executives, it's a different level of cutthroat. It's a different level of office politics. Their office politics might be worse than our politics. Much more demanding, much more competitive. To be at the top on the level of those institutions, of that industry, because you're not just talking to the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago and the Minister of Energy of Trinidad and Tobago. When you're in that industry, you're dealing with a government whose crown prince killed a reporter in the embassy. The stakes are different. The stakes are different. Let's not fool ourselves now. We could turn ourselves into an insignificant player by our own hubris and stupidity. We could turn ourselves into an insignificant player because we're too busy making mistakes, not understanding what it does to people, our own people, members of our own population. It's not a UNC problem, folks. I said that, right? It's not a UNC problem. It's a political problem. And the politics on some level starts from us. Never forget that. Never. Don't dare think that our country's problems is only due to the party that you dislike. Because if that's your worldview, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. We ping pong between the two parties enough. It can't be the case. It cannot be the case. Because if one party was truly better than the other, then we would be seeing elections like what you see in Barbados. Regardless of if Mia Mottley's party is legitimately better or not, on some level, it's really hard to be objectively superior. And the election results for the last 3 to 4 elections have been what they have been. It's very hard. It's very, very hard. We need to be realistic with ourselves now. We don't know what we want. We do not know what we want, and we do not know what to ask for, and we do not know what to look for in leadership. So we accept less than impressive performances. And then we want to blame them for the less than impressive performances. But the reality is, at least some of them are smart. They're giving us what we want. It's us that don't know what we want. Society is not built off of the decrees of a government. It is built on the values of a people. It is built on the courage and strength and will of a people. It is built on the acceptance and tolerance of a people. The politicians, you could say they fail with regards to leading us, to guiding us, to explaining to us, to helping us understand. But at the end of the day, the foundation of any politician's power is the will of the people. And if you try to build on a weak foundation, you get what you pay for. We will be spending top in mud, not just in the next few generations, but maybe till the point where our country fails and is absorbed or collapses. Because you cannot build a strong nation on a weak-willed people. And no amount of political mamagai is going to cover up that fact. No amount of it. Strong-willed politicians could potentially pull us out of our slumber, but we are asleep. We are asleep. Because a democracy, a capitalist economy requires not just the person on the top making a decision and then magically all the problems end. It requires work. It requires work all the way down the chain of command, all the way down the lines of authority, all the way down the pyramid of seniority. It requires effort. It requires buy-in. It requires some degree of commitment and understanding by the citizens of TNT through various means and mechanisms. Yes, and I don't have time to bother to go through all of it all now. But that's what a democracy is. It is not about you just pick a monarch and let him go like a dictator and you hope for the best. And if that dictator doesn't work, you choose another dictator. This is not ancient Rome during time of an emergency. This is 2026 Trinidad and Tobago, a legitimate Western modern democracy. But what point is talking about the will of the people if the people do not exercise their will? Or at the very least, exercise their responsibility to put some degree of understanding to the problems of society before they voice an opinion. Caller from Tobago, we'll close with the call. We lost the caller, oh gosh, I'm so sorry. Caller, if you call back in this minute, we could take the call, but we started to have to close the show now. Or call back tomorrow. There's more to say, there's more to say. Right? To what extent is Vasan Barat correct? Because he mentioned UNC supporters. I don't know. The alderman jumped ship, but that was a long time coming, apparently. I don't necessarily know what the motivations are for. The whole thing with the opposition leader, on some level, you can't discredit everything that she says. This whole situation with the Senate has distracted us from important wins of the government, to be honest, which is crazy, but it is what it is. The government has successfully pushed a bacchanal agenda that caused the nation. Are we fully aware of what's going on with the potential legislation being passed and what it could mean? Because ironically, this is maybe how you solve the judicial backlog. Well, maybe not, but maybe more the overcrowdedness of prisons with the parole situation. Tobago back on the line. We'll close with the caller. Caller, good morning. You're on here.
Yeah, hello?
Morning.
Yeah, morning.
Morning, caller. Go ahead.
Yeah, what happened? I would like to raise a topic on the same pension the lady was talking about earlier on.
Mm-hmm.
What happened? The RHA workers, after you work sometime 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 years, that does not want to give you the full pension as the ministry workers, which is 3,005.
Right.
They have a way when they make you permanent, they just backdate some of your service, and then when it's time for you to retire, they don't give you the full pension. But the whole thing about this is that public servants, on the whole, before RHAs and the ministry workers is being funded by taxpayers' money, you know, and when the time comes to get your pension, the RHA workers are looking at, they don't get the full pension, and then the Minister of Labour, who was in the PSA, he is not doing anything about that. And then the league, I think I get to understand that she is on the RHA board and she is not doing nothing about that. And the thing I don't like about this country is that when you raise up on these topics, it seems as though like nobody don't hear your voice, and some people just want to say who will guard the guards.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that need to highlight in this country, where pension, because most people who is working in either the ministry or the RHA does look forward for a pension when the time comes.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope the Minister of Labour look into this, and when the time comes for the budget, they should look into that carefully based on the cost of living that we have to be going through now, and look at this thing serious. The RHA workers, especially the ward attendant and them, some of them surprised that when they retire, some getting $600 pension, some getting $1,000, and most again, you're paying this pension fund, and most sometimes when they make you permanent, you pay the pension fund for how much, a few years, and when it's time to retire to go home now, they're still not getting the 3,005, and the ministry workers is not paying no pension fund, and they're getting the 3,005. Even the old age pension, most of the people who get an old age pension never work nowhere, and they're getting 3,005 because of politics.
Mm-hmm.
So I find the Minister of Labour should look into this carefully and examine this thing and look at the RHA. He is lobbying right now for the nurses and them. I hope that he and all fighting for the nurses, and they let them pull everybody together and give them the equal share. Okay?
Thank you, caller.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that whole situation, the RHAs, that's a whole other. I'll be honest, I do wonder if there's more than one ethical question with regards to HR practices because of the work that is demanded of them with regards to the compensation, how fair it is when compared to people in similar positions in the ministry, right? Look, first, I doubt that the minister is going to pay attention to the situation as you would like him to, or as others with concerns of the situation would like him to. I just doubt it. Why? Because of the politics. That's the short answer, right? Look, we live in a society where the mismanagement seems to be comfortable with, for the politics, some people will get, other people won't get. And then we're going to say, oh, well, we don't have money and we had to compromise on this. But it doesn't seem equitable. It doesn't seem fair. It doesn't seem as though certain people's work and efforts and contributions are as valued. And that's a problem. That's a problem because it's the wrong lessons, it's the wrong examples being passed down to the younger generations. And that might be part of the reason why, something similar to that might be part of the reason why lawyers don't want to be prosecutors anymore. So we can get all the police officers we want, but if we can't convict people, if we can't actually take them to trial, what's the point? We might as well not even arrest them. It's situations like this, it's mismanagement like this. And sometimes, listen, people will work in the RHAs and they might not fully understand the implications and the consequences down the line until it's too late for retirees. It's too late. Meanwhile, what are the politicians doing? What is the politics? I need to pay my people, my voters. That's number one. Number two, I need to give jobs to my people, my voters. One of the questions with the TTBS, and I'll come back to that, is it a jobs program situation? And that's why we're justifying hiring. But the fact of the matter is, it's not always, when you are bloating entities to give out jobs for people so that you could inflate the employment numbers, what happens is, it goes back to the first Arima, the caller from Arima's point. Your budget is this, you can't go outside of this, but you want to spend as though you have all of that. So what might end up happening is, and this is to Tobago's point, not everybody is treated fairly. Not everybody gets what they need. Not everybody gets what they potentially, it might have been an implied promise that was never clarified until the end, so that we could have enough money to hire more people. And in some cases, it's hiring more people, but the compensation is compromised. But it's fine because the employment numbers looks better and we cook in the bucks essentially. And now you get into, is this ethical? But then the caller had, and I'll close with this point, like nobody wants to hear it, like nobody cares. This is now members of the public. It's not just about political will. Political will is derived from societal will. And in TNT, we are more concerned about taking out loans to go and participate in Carnival Fetes and Carnival Monday and Tuesday. Too many people are more concerned about that than what's going on in the country. And ask yourself this, now maybe they'll be too old by that point in time, but what are you going to do if this country collapses and there is no more Carnival Monday and Tuesday? You think it's impossible? You think it's too big to fail? Nothing is impossible. No failed empire in human history understood or appreciated its own mortality. None expected to fail. You think Rome expected to fail? You think Athens or Sparta expected to fail? You think Xerxes expected to fail? You think the Han Dynasty expected to fail? The Holy Roman Empire, Constantinople, you think they expected to fail? We live at a time when countries just don't fail. How could they fail? They shouldn't fail. Shouldn't and impossible are not the same thing. If we take our nation for granted, if we're too complacent, it could very well just happen. And what Tobago and Arima was pointing to, that's how you get there. It's not overnight. It's slow and incremental steps. A slow erosion, much more insidious, much more difficult to guard against, because it's like that family member, you don't realize how much older they've gotten. To someone who hasn't seen them in a long time, the change is sudden, but to you who see them every day, you don't realize it until one day, long, long, long into the future. One day you'll realize, wow, when I look back at an old picture, everybody looks old. Yeah, but incrementally, we got accustomed to it. It wasn't noticeable to us. So we didn't say anything until the end. It's the same thing for a nation. That's how democracies tend to be undermined and destroyed. It's always a process of slow and incremental erosion until you reach the point of no return and someone puts the final nail in the coffin. And by then it's too late. Then you need to call some foreign power to help you out. Because as far as I am aware, no monarchies, yes, but modern dictatorships, no modern dictatorship has been successfully ended by its own population. But it's fine. God is a Trinity. Something will work out. I don't need to do anything. And that's where it starts. The easiest people to fool are the ones that are not concerned and don't actually want to do anything about it. And they don't want to know anything about it. That's the easiest people to fool. That's the easiest people to enslave. Stay safe. Remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other. Thanks to all of the callers. This is Talking Point on WESN. It's nice to be nice. I'm Sugar Michael Small, and I'll see you tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
WESN.